As it disappears, rising oceans will flood coastal cities around the world. Greenland's Jakobshavn Glacier is the fastest moving ice field on the planet, more than 40 meters per day, melting into the sea twice as fast as a decade ago. Rising temperatures are transforming one of the Earth's harshest climates, disrupting the way people have lived in Greenland for hundreds of years. For as long as anyone can remember, sled dogs have been a symbol of wealth here and a necessity for survival, especially for hunting across the winter sea ice. When the winter ice started thinning, dogs became an expense most islanders couldn't afford. In this town of 4,500 people, there are 4,000 dogs, with very little to do these days. Many are starving. Some are being put down. Marit Holm is one of Greenland's 5 veterinarians. As she patrols the town of Ilulissat, she sees the impact of climate change in every sled dog without a sled to pull.
So that's what I do. I drive around and look after the dogs. The dogs are hungry, so I have to be a little bit careful not to get bitten. And when the dogs are hungry, you know, they are a little bit more dangerous to people and kids walking around. It doesn't seem to be sick. He's very skinny. So I have to try to find out who's the owner and talk to him.
These animals were once in peak physical condition. They served a vital purpose in their owners' lives.
That's a thing of the past, and we don't see any young people who takes some dogs and live as a fisherman and a hunter.
Dogs have been in Finn Sistel's family as long as he can remember. He finally gave up his team of 19 just in the last few years.
In the winter, even though it was an impossible thing to do about 20 years ago, most of the fishermen go out with a boat today instead of dog sleds.
When Finn was growing up, this was their winter hunting ground. Solid ice for more than half the year.
Everything happens so fast. It's so visible, you don't have to be a scientist to determine what's happening.
With each passing season, Finn watches as traditions locked in the ice melt away.
There's something interesting in the side because you can see small bubbles. And these bubbles are older than all living creatures in the world. And you can listen to it. Because the bubbles are so compressed. And when they get out, it's like popping. You can talk to the ice.
That's what an intrepid team of scientists does once a year. Fly into Greenland's interior to listen to the ice. Swiss Camp is a scientific research installation built directly into the glacier to track climate change. Dr. Conrad Steffens has erected 23 full-service weather stations that take a complete range of climate measurements every 15 seconds, updating global warming computer models all over the world.
The ice sheet is very old. It's over 150,000 years old. If we start to remove it, then we actually start a process that is unknown to civilization. We have never seen Greenland disappearing.
Watch it, watch it, watch it.
In 1992, 5.6 kilometers of glacier was slipping into the sea and disappearing. 10 years later, that number more than doubled to 15.5 kilometers annually. Steffens wouldn't understand how warmer weather affects the speed of glaciers until he came upon one of the strangest and most dangerous features of this forbidding landscape. Rivers of melted ice are cascading straight down into the glacier, creating huge tunnels called moulins. The team lowers a fiber optic camera. Their hypothesis? That meltwater has cut all the way through to the bedrock a quarter of a mile below and is lubricating the underside of the glacier, propelling it faster and faster into the sea.
60 meters, my God. 60 meters.
For Steffens and his team, it is a chilling moment. This shaft, and many like it, go all the way through the glacier, revealing a whole new mechanism for speeding the ice sheet's disappearance. It's melting so rapidly now, oceans could rise as much as a meter over the next century. The consequences could be catastrophic.
The Greenland ice sheet actually contains enough frozen water to raise global sea levels by about 7 meters, which is enough to flood most of London, Bangkok, New York, Shanghai, you name it.
Many scientists focus on 2 degrees of warming as the tipping point that will fundamentally change how we live on this planet. This could be where global warming becomes a runaway train. Warming accelerates the loss of polar ice. The loss of ice accelerates warming. More water from melting ice absorbs more of the sun's heat, melting the ice sheet and heating the planet even faster. The warmer it gets, the faster it gets warmer. That's when global warming becomes a chain reaction we can't easily predict. If a rise of 2 degrees doesn't push the planet to the tipping point, many scientists predict 3 degrees will. If the world warms by 3 degrees, the Arctic is ice-free all summer. The Amazon rainforest is drying out. Snow caps on the Alps all but disappear. El Niño's extreme weather patterns become the status quo. The Mediterranean and parts of Europe wither in searing summer heat. This could be our world plus 3 degrees. The summer of 2003 may have opened a window onto life in a world that's 3 degrees warmer. All across Europe, an unrelenting heat wave developed into a natural disaster. Paris tends to empty in the summer. Many elderly stay behind. Nobody could have anticipated the danger they'd be in. Emergency room doctors were the first to realize something was terribly wrong. Dr. Patrick Pellew quickly realizes the heat wave is turning into a catastrophe.
You had such a heat wave comparable to a flamethrower igniting an entire area. Le nombre de personnes qui sont mortes dans la nuit du 10...
The number of people who died on the night of August 10 is between 2,500 and 3,000.
The city's distinctive metal roofs were designed for an earlier era to protect against winter chill. Now rising temperatures have turned them against the Parisians. The death toll would top 30,000 across Europe. In France alone, over 14,000 died in just a few weeks. During the heat wave of 2003, another little-noticed phenomenon among Europe's trees and plants was unfolding, a kind of vegetation backlash. Photosynthesis was breaking down. Under normal conditions, plants and trees are a first line of defense against greenhouse gases, absorbing CO2, then converting it into oxygen and releasing it back into the atmosphere. But in the extreme heat that summer, some plants retained oxygen, releasing CO2 into the atmosphere instead. What happens to the biosphere if one of the planet's most important mechanisms for converting CO2 into oxygen stops working on a regular basis? Possible answers are emerging here at England's Hadley Centre, one of the world's foremost facilities for forecasting where our climate could be headed. Trying to peer decades into the future keeps climate modelers at their desks overtime.
Tea and coffee?
One of their toughest challenges is calculating the effect of +3-degree warming on the Amazon rainforest, where 20% of the world's oxygen is produced.
We wanted to know how climate change in the future would affect tropical rainforests, and in particular the Amazon, because it is such an iconic region, it's important both environmentally, ecologically and economically.
The climate model produces an ominous prediction. 3 degrees of warming could trigger a catastrophic feedback loop, accelerating global warming even more, possibly reducing one of the wettest places on Earth into a patchwork of arid savanna.
Occasionally it takes someone to come from outside and say, well, do you know what that means, don't you? You're talking about the death of the Amazon.
Summer 2005, the Amazon River. Extreme heat teems with the driest conditions anyone can remember. Few can recall a time on the mightiest river in the world when its tributaries ran dry, not low, dirt dry.
In 2005, we saw a situation in the Amazon which was just incredible. It was completely off the scale. The Brazilian army actually had to fly by helicopter huge quantities of water up the dried up Amazon tributaries in order to stop people dying of thirst in villages which are normally on the edge of this enormous river.
First drought, then fire. In the aftermath of summer 2005, over 2,500 square kilometers of the rainforest burn. Trees help generate 50% of the water for rainfall in the Amazon. As more forest is lost, the very source of the Amazon's rainfall diminishes.
For every tree that we lose, we're making one more incremental step towards a scenario of drought and fire in the region.
Ecologist Daniel Nepstad has been studying the Amazon for over 25 years and sees global warming and deforestation pushing the region toward a tipping point.
We think that maybe as early as 20 years from now, we're going to see what we call positive feedbacks kick in, these vicious cycles of drought leading to fire, leading to more drought. And that's much sooner, of course, than the climate models are giving us.
In the extreme conditions of a world warmer by 3 degrees, losing much of the Amazon could cause the re-release of hundreds of millions of tons of storage.